don't forget the ones who helped you get to where you are. They've seen your ups and downs and joys and chaos in between, and they've still been there for you because they love your mission. You don't have to sell a previous donor on how great you are and what impact you make in the community. They're already there. And they're the ones where your major donors are going to come from. They're the ones that your wills and bequests are going to come from. And yet we are so tantalized by the idea of getting a brand new donor. And we forget the ones that loved us the most.
Welcome to the Focus Fundraiser. This is where I get to discuss how to focus on the right fundraising practices with those that are in the trenches with nonprofits doing the hard work together. Because something we believe is doing more shouldn't be the goal. Doing what matters most should be the goal. And today I'm talking with Patrick Kirby, founder of Do Good Better Consulting, a personal friend, an author, a podcaster. You do it all, Patrick, so I'm excited to dive into it with you. You've coached hundreds of organizations, so you have deep knowledge in the nonprofit sector. And so for those listening, if you have ever felt like fundraising advice was written for someone with a bigger team or a bigger budget, this one's for you because, Patrick, you do a really good job of breaking down good donor engagement and stewardship into very manageable tasks. So welcome. Start us off by sharing a bit about yourself and your path into the nonprofit sector.
Sure. So I'm Patrick Kirby. I'm the founder of Do Good Better Consulting. We're a firm out of West Fargo, North Dakota. We help nonprofits suck less at fundraising. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. Most of us, like I would say 99% of us, are accidental fundraisers. We fell backwards into it because we were either a good storyteller, good marketer, good salesperson. And someone along the lines, when you started at your nonprofit, said, you know what, we need to raise money. And they all looked at you. And then now you're responsible for everything like galas and wine events and also the appeal and also major gifts and also the writing of the newsletter. Like, you know the drill. You know where you are. You know this is you. And I've been there too. So I've been in the trenches for 20 years. I got my start, actually, oddly enough, right after college because I was a politics major. And I decided because I was a politics major, I knew everything about politics. I was going to run for office. I ran. I got my butt kicked, but I raised more money than I was legally allowed to spend in a campaign race. So I was a terrible politician, became a really good fundraiser, and I've been doing that nonstop for over 2 decades. And my obsession is trying to make fundraising less complicated, way more fun, and sort of demystifying the complicated nature of all the things you could do for fundraising and concentrate on the things you actually need to do in order to make better relationships long term, and then you de-stress yourself from the whole thing. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's fantastic. So because you've been in this space for a while, you've coached hundreds of people or nonprofits. I'm curious to know if you have the most common fundraising mistake or mistakes that you see that has nothing to do with budget or team size, but that spans the gamut.
Yes, I think the most the largest mistake, I wouldn't even call it a mistake because we don't really, again, nobody knows what they're doing. We're all guessing at this point, is trying to do it all and forgetting to go back to the basics. And I feel like we as fundraisers feel if we go to the basics, if we just pick up the phone and we write a handwritten note, it's not doing enough. And I would challenge you to say it's actually, that's where the magic happens. And I've been preaching this a lot with, we have so many tools at technology, right? So we've got DonorDoc, which is this wonderful, digital and CRM magician behind the scenes that allows you to not do the stuff you don't want to do. So you can sit in front of people and have coffee and give somebody a hug and a high five and look at them face to face over a conversation. That's where I want all nonprofits to be. I want them to have and use the technology out there to free up the time to do the things that actually matter, which is making a human connection. And I know this is true is because you can see it in the data, right? So bigger donors are giving to fewer and fewer organizations. There's a lot more competition in the industry for visual and airtime, and people's attention spans are the length of gnats. So you have to do something completely different. And the thing to do differently is to go back to what has worked for decades and decades, which is actually asking somebody a really good question, being an active listener, and sort of making sure alignment and purpose is first, everything else falls into place, but you have to have the one-on-one human interaction. It is absolutely key to fundraising. And I think complicating it with doing everything and being in every social space and it being in every social media place and doing, a podcast, a newsletter, a this and this and this and this and this takes up all of your time when all your donors want to do is know what their dollars did, how it works out well for the community, and do they feel appreciated and shown adoration and love the way that they want to feel.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do.
Yeah. Something that I feel like I've heard so much lately when I talk to fundraisers is stewardship is a priority when they talk about it. But when I ask them where it is on their to-do list, it is rarely at the top. So I'm curious from your perspective, what's the importance of stewardship? And I'm leading you into let's talk about retention, right? Like
Yeah.
that's the whole
Yeah.
idea. So
Yeah.
curious to know your thoughts on stewardship stewardship over looking for more attribution or not attribution, a more new donors versus
Yeah.
recurring donors and retention.
Well, I mean, we all know the stat that it takes a lot more effort to get a new donor than it is to retain a donor, and then we do the opposite, which is just try to find new people, and really starting with the ones that love you the most and have loved you the longest is the game plan that every nonprofit needs to work on, right? So don't forget the ones who helped you get to where you are. They're the ones that have seen you through troubled times. They've seen your ups and downs and joys and chaos in between, and they've still been there for you because they love your mission. You don't have to sell a previous donor on how great you are and what impact you make in the community. They're already there. And they're the ones where your major donors are going to come from. They're the ones that your wills and bequests are going to come from. And yet we are so tantalized by the idea of getting a brand new donor. And we forget the ones that loved us the most. And so I like two things. And here's a quick win that you can have with every one of your donors is ask this question to the ones that you have had in your corner very long. How do you like to be thanked? Ask them that question. And a lot of nonprofits don't ask that because they think it is they don't even think about it, right? If you know exactly what the love language of your donors are, your stress level on how to navigate them is zero. So if I ask you, Rob, I go, well, hey, what's your love language? How do you like to be thanked? And you said, I like words of affirmation, or I like little trinkets and gifts. I know exactly what to do for you every time you make a gift or in random acts of generosity or kindness or just gratitude across the year. You don't have to do it every time. In fact, you shouldn't just do it when they give you a gift. You should just do this randomly throughout the year, letting them know you're thinking about them. But if you don't know how they like to be thanked and they don't like you wasting money on stuff, they don't want another coffee mug, they don't want another thing, and you send them another thing, they're going to look at this and go, they don't even know who I am. They don't even know my values and why I give to this organization in the first place. It's the best question to ask any donor, and no one's doing it. And you have the opportunity to have the upper hand in a series of conversations that these donors are having with other organizations. Yes, they're dating other people. It's fine. You're their most special one if you know how they love to be interacted with. So ask them the question, how do you like to be thanked? That is the key to unlocking not only a specific and hyper-personalized gratitude plan, but it keeps them interested in your organization. That is the retention goal, number one.
I think that pairs so well with the idea of segmentation and asking the other question of how do you want to be communicated to, right? Is it
Yes.
email? Is it phone calls? Is it text messages? Is it
Yep.
your letter in the mail? So like that pairs so well with it because then you can say, how do you want to be thanked alongside a text message or grabbing coffee, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And I think if somebody says, because I think a lot of concern is like, well, don't send me anything. I don't want to be sent anything. What donors are probably saying there is, I don't need to be solicited. I don't need a bunch of stuff. Your counter to that is, hey, Rob, I have kind of this obsession with just getting updates and just sending you notes throughout the year. I don't want to ask you for any money. That's I'm not going to do. But is it okay if I just update you with how much of an impact that your gifts have made? Or can I just send you random things in the mail because it's just something I like to do? It makes me feel great. And is that okay? And most people will say, of course you can. What they're telling you is like, I don't talk to me until the end of the year, or they're just talking about solicitation as a whole. They're not talking about little notes in between the actual solicitation in your whole game plan. You cannot go an entire year not communicating with your donors. And so you have to, I wouldn't say ignore it, but ask permission from the donor to just connect and just make a little quick statement or make a little quick note, even if it is, like you said, a text message, which is a super powerful tool in your tool belt of fundraising, is just a note. Hey, Rob, thought about you today. Went past this store, and I know you and I were talking about this, whatever. I hope you're doing great. That's it. You didn't ask them for anything. It wasn't even donor related. It was just you as a human connecting with another human, which is why I go back to this analog business that I've been obsessing over, is that people want to feel connected with stuff. And if your organization is one of those stuffs, congratulations, you are well on your way to being a really, really good fundraiser.
You said something earlier that your current donors, you don't need to convince them of what your impact is. But I would argue that you do unless you're stewarding correctly, right? So if you steward
Yeah.
correctly, then they have an ongoing understanding of the impact that you're creating. But if you just ask them once a year for some donations, then you might lose them on that.
Well, I mean, think about this, and I'll give you a good example. I have someone who only calls me when they need something, to the point where I know if they're calling, they need something from me. They want something, and so I'm not going to pick up the phone. Think about that with all your donors. If the only time that you connect with them is the way that you want to ask for money, they know that. You don't think they know that. They absolutely freaking know that. So think about it from that position and be self-aware enough to know, when's the last time I interacted with one of our donors? Did I say thank you enough? Did I give them an update in between? What am I doing to make a deeper connection with them that doesn't have anything to do with fundraising? There's the goal. And that's your retention plan. So if you need to build out a calendar and say every 3 months, I'm just going to touch base and say hi with the top 25 donors we have, that's a great plan. And it's manageable even if you have a small team, even if that team is so small, it's just you. Figure out what that number is and just make sure that they're loved on more than most human beings, and they will always come back to you in the end.
You touched on the importance of a tool like DonorDoc that helps get rid of the admin tasks so that you can focus on the relationship. I think a lot of teams out there, a lot of people treat their CRM like a filing cabinet or a data lake instead of a relationship tool, because a lot of them don't have relationship tools built in like DonorDoc does. But what are a handful of things that fundraisers should be tracking and actively engaging with in their CRM to make sure that these stewardship pieces happen consistently?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, number one is the last time that you talked with them. I think that's a really important thing to track. If you're tracking their activity, when's the last time that they opened up an email, or you sent them a letter that you wrote personally? When's the last time they made a gift? And if they made a gift in twice in a year or more, if they're giving to you on a regular basis, you have done something remarkably correct. And you want to make sure that you flag multiple donors, or the donors who give multiple times in a giving season. So that's number one. Number two, you should always track the communications, like we talked about too. How do they like to be communicated with? And then really how they like to be thanked. That's really interesting. And I would also be, and again, I'm obsessed with the idea of leading with curiosity. If you have a space in your notes that said just interesting, fun facts about this person, and I relay this story or this saying every time I try to get on a camera or on a stage, and I will repeat this till the day I die. But a mentor of mine once said, "You never ask for a major gift unless you know the name of your donor's dog," which is the most brilliant piece of things that I've ever gotten in my entire life. And it means you're more interested in the person than the pocketbook. And so find little nuggets of interesting things about your donor that maybe no one else knows about. And it's because you're asking really good questions. You're not asking like, how was your weekend? How was this, right? You're asking them in-depth conversations. I'll give you an example. I just sent out a blog about quantum mechanics. I don't know how that it relates to fundraising. I made it work, but I'm super interested in the nerdy science things. People probably don't know that. They probably know that I'm a dork, and they probably know that I'm a super nerd when it comes to video game stuff, but I am fascinated with the quantum realm of just the universe and how things work. If you knew that about me and you sent me an article that you read about something somewhere, I'm locked in because that is a piece of knowledge and a connection at a level that is so crazy niche and nuanced that I'm now vested in you. So one of the things that I would track that's easy to do if you've got a notes page, especially in DonorDoc, right, is what is a one weird thing or a couple of weird things that you've picked up on. Now, how you do that is asking great questions, number one, and yes, documenting that information, number two, but it's just being a curious, self-aware person. Are you just having a conversation to get to know the person, or are you trying to get a gift down the line?
Yeah.
And those two ways of having a conversation are totally different. And I would treat your donors the way that you want to be treated. It's weird. It's like a golden rule or something, right? But it is so meaningful because you can pick out when you're actively listening some really cool insights that give you an upper hand when people are deciding what organization they want to give to.
Fantastic advice. I love that. All right, I want to ask you about boards because boards are supposed to be raising money. I think that's a blanket statement, but it's true. But they often don't. So what do you think is the most effective way that fundraisers can help them or help a reluctant board member actually open a door to a donor or bring in people to their gala? How do you get donors involved?
All right. So this is a very complicated question. I'm going to try to give it as simple of an answer as possible because you don't need very complicated ways of trying to fix your board, right? Number one, hyper communicate with your board on what you need. A lot of board members get on boards and they have a binder that they get. It's probably dusty from the last board member that they took over from. There's not a really good onboarding process because it's very boring and mundane and nobody wants to do that. So they're left guessing on what they're expected to do. And then they're sitting there at the board meeting like, okay, well, this person does this and this is, I don't want to speak up and I really don't want to do anything. And then when you kind of get frustrated that they're not fundraising, they're like, you never told me to do anything. I didn't have an expectation to fundraise, right? So communicate. I love at least once a year having a reboarding session. It's where you sit down and you lay the groundwork on expectations for the next year, right? It's just you're like just refreshing the palette. You are resetting the playbook. You're just saying, okay, here's what we are trying to do, and here's how we need your assistance in how to get there. Now, of course, it ends up being fundraising, but what if you took a different approach? What if the first thing you told your board is, I don't want you to fundraise? Weird, right? Hold on. What if you said, the only thing I want you to do is introduce me or introduce the organization to really cool human beings? One that should know about what we're doing, or someone who's very influential that has a large Rolodex that should know about the awesome work that we're doing. Now you take the pressure of fundraising off of the board member and you get to what you really want, which is introductions. You can take it from there. Honestly, if I needed to know who Rob was and I didn't know Rob, it's very difficult for me to just go, hi, Rob, this is Patrick. I don't know you and you don't know me, but I'd love to get coffee with you. And Rob's like, I don't know. What? Nope. No, thank you. And hang up. If Rob's really good friend gets a hold of him and said, hey, I'm meeting this really cool dude and I'm part of this organization that's really awesome, it would mean a lot to me for you guys to have coffee and just to learn a little bit more. He's not going to ask you for money. He just wants to tell the story. And I think you actually really might be aligned with this. I'd owe you one and I'll buy the coffee. That changes the entire dynamic of meeting somebody new. And they almost vouch for this person. So now you've got a warm lead rather than a cold, you could just Google somebody's, name and address. And all of a sudden That is a transformative relationship done by the board. There's no pressure in fundraising, and then you get to have this wonderful person in your sort of life now that
Yeah.
might be able to introduce you to other human beings too. So I would take a different approach. Don't expect them to fundraise, but absolutely expect them to door open, but you have to recalibrate what their expectations are every single year and then make it doable. Don't say I need 5 names a month. Because if you have 10 board members and they give you 5 names a month, you yourself are not going to get through those 50 names. Sorry, you're not a superhuman. You've got 10,000 other things to do. You've got 10,000 other hats you're wearing. It's not going to happen. 1 a month, maybe even 2 a quarter, whatever's rhythmically okay that doesn't seem overwhelming for your board members is a great KPI to go get. And it's easy to understand and it's easy for them to do. You want to make it as simple as possible so that they feel as if they're helping without being overwhelmed.
Hmm. I think you're touching on something outside of the board itself, which is the amount of capacity or bandwidth that fundraisers have because they're wearing all of these hats, like you said at the very beginning. I'd be curious to know your thoughts on the burnout piece of it because there's so much turnover in this sector. What is a change that you recommend to fundraisers to hedge this, to make sure that they don't
Yeah.
burn out, that they keep their sanity through all this, that they keep their passion in it?
One of the things that I thought was fascinating, and you and I were there, we were at the North Dakota sort of annual conference of the North Dakota Association of Nonprofit Organizations here just last week. And we had a community roundtable kind of getting to the root of a lot of the current concerns and really optimism or terrified pieces that nonprofits are having. We had 180 people sitting around a room. We all sort of sat and talked in very open settings. And the number one thing that came across every single nonprofit organization was burnout of leadership. Every single one.
Mhm.
It didn't miss a beat. And I think it stems from a lot of different things. We are, by nature, working in this industry, very obsessed with making the world a better place. And we're constantly getting beaten by grants drying up or our donors dying or moving away or somebody leaves the organization or a board member saying something. Like we're constantly battered about this. And so people are leaving the industry completely or they are retiring and they're just saying, enough is enough. I'm going to go try something new. I'm going to try to refresh my brain before I'm going to go give back again. I think the number one thing that you need to do is acknowledge it rather than put your head in the sand like an ostrich. And we tend to do that in the nonprofit world. We tend to say, I will continue to shoulder all of this. And it is the least healthy thing. I'm not going to tell you to deep breathe or take a yoga class because that's almost offensive. All I want you to do is acknowledge it and then realize that this is a long game, not a short win process. And that will change your perspective on feeling the pressure of needing to get like all these wins back to back to back to back to back. And it's very difficult to do. The second thing that I would say is find a peer group or a community that you can talk to others to let them know that you're feeling stressed and then they can tell you that as well. And you don't use it as a bitching and moaning session that you never come up with some solution, but you want to acknowledge and you want to find other people to tell you that you're not alone in this. Those are my two things. Like it's a long game and just be self-aware about you can't do everything, number one, and find a peer group and a community that you can be a part of that you feel comfortable enough to know that you're not this crazy. It's not you. It's the entire sector as a whole. And sometimes you just need a little bit of validation to do that exact same thing.
That's such good advice. Okay, we are out of time. We try to keep this around 20 minutes. We
We
could
should do
keep
this for
talking
like an
about
hour.
this.
I think this
I
should be an
know.
hour long. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Let's just co-host this together next
Let's
time,
do it.
Patrick. Yeah.
Again, 100%.
I always end with what I call the tactical takeaway. This is a question I ask every guest. Patrick, what is one thing that every fundraiser should do today that you believe matters most?
Pick up the phone. I know it sounds crazy. But these things, these supercomputers in our pockets, actually call people. And you would be shocked. You'd be shocked at the great conversations that you have with your donors when you just call to say hi, to say thank you, and just let them know what their gifts are doing. Don't make an ask. Don't ask for money. Don't ask them to volunteer. Don't ask them to sponsor stuff. Don't ask them for things. Just call and make a conversation happen. And don't rely on email. And don't just rely on the newsletter that you hope they read. And don't rely on the invitation to the event that they don't really know anything about, and you kind of get upset that they didn't show up. Pick up the phone. Your life will change as a fundraiser, and I know it sounds super simple because it is, but it will be a game-changing moment the minute you stop leaning on other avenues. And remember, let the CRM do the work. Let DonorDoc do the work on the back end to find you the number and where they are and what they're doing, and check the notes so you can just pick up the phone and have a nice phone call. I swear it will change your life. Pick up the phone.
Awesome. Patrick, huge thank you to joining me today on this discussion. Where can people connect with you if they want to get in touch, get on your email newsletter? So you've got a fantastic weekly newsletter. I'd recommend people getting on.
I appreciate that. You're the best. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I've been a super fan of you guys for as long as I can remember, which is a number one. You can find me at dogoodbetterconsulting.com. That's dogoodbetterconsulting.com.
And you recently released your second book, I believe last year, called Fundraise Like a Fifth Grader. So if you guys are interested in more from Patrick, go look at that on Amazon and pick that up as well. So that's a really good book.
You're the best.
All right. For those listening, if you are curious, we talked a little bit about DonorDoc. If you're curious about how DonorDoc can help you find this clarity, build strong donor relationships, and build retention in your nonprofit through smart stewardship, you can visit us at donordoc.com to learn more. And we will see you next week.